The invitation said casual dress, but everyone knew it was a trap. They wanted to humiliate me in front of the entire company. What they didn't know was that the quiet man picking me up wasn't just my boyfriend. He was worth more than all their trust funds combined. Before we dive into this incredible story of revenge and hidden wealth, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss stories like this one. Now, let me tell you about the night that changed everything. My name is Rachel, and 6 months ago, I thought I knew exactly what my life was. I was the girl who brought homemade sandwiches to work, while everyone else ordered expensive takeout. I was the one wearing the same 3 blazers on rotation, while my colleagues showed off their designer outfits. I was the administrative assistant at Preston and Associates, who worked late every night, not because I loved the job, but because I needed every penny from those overtime hours. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and immediately know you don't belong? That was my daily reality at Preston and Associates, one of the city's most prestigious marketing firms. The marble floors clicked under my worn flats, while everyone else strutted in Louboutins. The glass walls reflected my discount store outfits against their tailored suits and designer dresses. I wasn't just the office assistant. I was the reminder of what they never wanted to become. The worst part wasn't even the work itself. I actually loved organizing campaigns, coordinating meetings, and making sure everything ran smoothly. What made each day feel like walking through quicksand was dealing with Brittany Preston and her little army of entitled princesses. Brittany was the boss's daughter, which meant she could do whatever she wanted without consequences. And what she wanted most days was to make my life miserable. "Oh, Rachel," she would say in that sickeningly sweet voice whenever she passed my desk, "did you get that adorable little purse at a garage sale? It's so vintage." Her friends Jessica and Madison would giggle like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. They'd make comments about my packed lunches, joke about my old phone that had a cracked screen, and whisper loudly about how some people just didn't understand professional dress codes. I learned to keep my head down and focus on my work. Every insult, every snide comment, every moment of public humiliation was just fuel for my determination to save money and eventually find something better. I told myself their words didn't matter, that their opinions meant nothing, but late at night, when I was calculating whether I could afford groceries that week, their voices would echo in my head. The one bright spot in my life was Thomas. We'd met 8 months earlier in the most ridiculous way possible. I was rushing to catch the bus after another brutal day at work when I crashed into him outside a coffee shop, spilling my drink all over his plain white t-shirt. I was mortified, apologizing frantically while trying to clean the mess with napkins. But he just laughed it off, said it gave him an excuse to buy a new shirt, and somehow we ended up talking for 2 hours. Thomas was different from anyone I'd ever met. He was kind without expecting anything in return. He listened when I talked about my dreams of maybe starting my own business someday. He never made me feel ashamed about clipping coupons or shopping at thrift stores. When we went out, it was usually to small cafes or free events in the park. He drove an old Honda Civic that made weird noises, lived in a modest apartment across town, and always insisted on splitting the bill because he said he respected my independence. He was vague about his work, just saying he was in business and did consulting stuff. I figured he was probably struggling financially too, maybe working freelance projects or trying to get his own company off the ground. It didn't matter to me. For the first time in years, I felt like someone saw me as more than just my bank account or my zip code, which is why I was so shocked when Brittany decided to include me in her engagement party. It was a Tuesday morning when she made her grand announcement, standing in the middle of our open office like she was addressing her royal subjects. "Everyone," she called out, clapping her hands together, "I have the most exciting news. Derek finally proposed, and we're having our engagement party at the Grandview Country Club this Saturday. The Grandview Country Club. Even I knew that name. It was where all the city's elite went to see and be seen. Membership fees alone cost more than I made in 2 years. Brittany started walking around the office, handing out thick cream-colored invitations with gold lettering. Each person she gave one to squealed with excitement, immediately discussing what they would wear and which designer boutique they needed to visit. I turned back to my computer, assuming I'd be spending Saturday night at home with takeout and Netflix, when I heard those perfectly manicured nails tapping on my desk. "Rachel," Brittany purred, and I looked up to see her holding out an invitation. "You simply must come. It'll be so educational for you." My heart sank as I read the invitation. Cocktail attire, Saturday night, RSVP required. The paper felt expensive in my hands, and I could practically smell the trap being set. This wasn't an invitation. It was a setup for public humiliation. I'm not sure I can make it," I started to say, but Brittany cut me off with a wave of her hand. "Oh, but you have to. It wouldn't be the same without you there. Besides," she leaned in closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear, "it's important for people like you to see how the other half lives. Consider it a learning experience." The words hit like a slap, but I forced a smile and thanked her for the invitation. As soon as she walked away, Jessica appeared at my desk with a fake, concerned expression. "You know, Rachel, if you need help finding something appropriate to wear, there's a really nice consignment shop downtown. They have some lovely, older pieces." That night, I stared at the invitation on my kitchen counter like it was a bomb waiting to explode. Part of me wanted to throw it away and pretend it never happened. But another part of me, the part that was tired of being treated like I was invisible, wanted to go just to prove I belonged there as much as anyone else. When I told Thomas about it over dinner at our usual diner, his reaction surprised me. Instead of suggesting I skip it like I expected, he seemed genuinely interested. He asked detailed questions about where I worked, who my colleagues were, and what the office dynamics were like. When I mentioned Brittany's name, something flickered across his face that I couldn't quite read. "I think you should go," he said finally, reaching across the table to take my hand. "And I'd like to come with you, if that's okay." I nearly choked on my coffee. Thomas had always been shy about social situations, preferring quiet nights in to big parties or crowds. The idea of him willingly walking into the lion's den of my workplace politics seemed completely out of character. "Are you sure?" I asked. "It's going to be intense. These people can be really cruel, and I don't want you to have to deal with that." He squeezed my hand gently, and there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before, a quiet confidence that made me feel like maybe everything would be okay. "Trust me, Rachel. I can handle myself. Besides, I think it's time I met the people you work with." The next few days were a whirlwind of anxiety and preparation. I scoured every discount store and outlet mall in the city, finally finding a simple black dress for $43 that would have to do. My roommate let me borrow her only pair of heels and some jewelry that looked expensive from a distance. I practiced walking in those shoes until my feet were covered in blisters, watched YouTube tutorials on cocktail party etiquette, and tried to prepare myself mentally for whatever Brittany had planned. Saturday evening arrived faster than I wanted it to. I stood in front of my mirror, smoothing down the discount dress and trying to convince myself I looked presentable. The shoes pinched my feet, the borrowed jewelry felt foreign against my skin, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was dressed up for my own execution. I was waiting outside my apartment building when I saw the car pull up. For a moment, I thought there had been some mistake. A gleaming black Rolls-Royce slid up to the curb like something out of a movie, its chrome details reflecting the streetlights. I looked around, expecting to see some wealthy resident of my building emerge when the driver's door opened. Thomas stepped out and I barely recognized him. Gone were the casual jeans and simple t-shirts I was used to seeing. Instead, He wore a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that looked like it had been made specifically for his body. His usually messy hair was styled impeccably, and he moved with a confidence I'd never noticed before. "You look beautiful," he said, taking my hand and helping me into the passenger seat. The interior of the car was even more luxurious than the outside: soft leather seats, polished wood accents, and technology I didn't even recognize. "Thomas," I gasped, running my hand along the leather seat. "Whose car is this? How did you— I mean, this must have cost—" "I borrowed it from a friend," he said smoothly, starting the engine. The car purred to life so quietly I could barely hear it. He owed me a favor, and I thought we should arrive in style. As we drove through the city toward the country club, I couldn't help but stare at him. This confident, polished man beside me seemed like a stranger. When had he learned to navigate luxury cars so effortlessly? Where had he gotten a tuxedo that probably cost more than my monthly rent? And why did the valet at every red light seem to recognize the car? "Are you nervous?" he asked, glancing over at me as we turned into the Grandview Country Club's circular driveway. "Terrified," I admitted. "I feel like I'm about to walk into a firing squad." He reached over and squeezed my hand. "Just remember, you deserve to be there as much as anyone else. Don't let them make you feel otherwise." The valet who approached our car did a double take when he saw Thomas, immediately straightening his posture and opening the door with unusual deference. "Good evening, sir," he said with a level of respect that seemed excessive for someone driving a borrowed car. "Welcome back to Grandview." "Welcome back." I filed that detail away as Thomas came around to help me out of the car. As we walked toward the entrance, I noticed the way staff members nodded respectfully at Thomas, how other guests seemed to recognize him and whisper among themselves. But when I asked about it, he just shrugged and said something about good customer service. The Grandview Country Club was even more intimidating inside than I'd imagined. Crystal chandeliers hung from coffered ceilings, marble floors stretched in every direction, and everything gleamed with the kind of perfection that only unlimited money could buy. The engagement party was being held in the main ballroom, which had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. Ice sculptures caught the light from hundreds of candles, champagne fountains bubbled with expensive bottles I'd only heard about, and flower arrangements that probably cost more than my car decorated every surface. I felt completely out of place immediately. Every other woman was wearing designer gowns that I recognized from magazine covers. Their jewelry caught the light with the unmistakable sparkle of real diamonds, and they moved through the room with the confidence that comes from never having to check a price tag. Meanwhile, I tugged at my discount dress and tried not to trip in my borrowed heels. That's when I spotted Brittany holding court near the champagne fountain, resplendent in a white gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. She saw me immediately, and the predatory smile that spread across her face told me everything I needed to know about her plans for the evening. "Rachel," she called out, loud enough to turn heads throughout the room. "You made it! And you brought a date! How wonderful!" She glided over with Jessica and Madison flanking her like backup dancers, their smiles sharp enough to cut glass. I felt Thomas's hand settle protectively on my lower back, steadying me. "Everyone, I want you to meet Rachel," Brittany announced to the small crowd that had gathered. "She works at Daddy's company. She's our little administrative assistant. Isn't she brave for coming tonight?" The way she said brave made it clear that she thought I was either incredibly courageous or incredibly stupid. The women around us tittered politely, while their eyes catalogued every detail of my appearance, no doubt calculating the exact cost of my outfit down to the penny. "And this must be your boyfriend," Jessica added, looking Thomas up and down with barely concealed amusement. "How nice that you found someone to bring as your date." I felt my cheeks burning with embarrassment, but Thomas remained perfectly calm. He extended his hand to Brittany with a polite smile. "Thomas," he said simply, "congratulations on your engagement." "Thank you," Brittany purred, shaking his hand while studying him like he was a specimen under a microscope. "And what do you do, Thomas?" I work in business, he replied, the same vague answer he'd always given me. But something in his tone made Brittany's smile falter slightly. The conversation continued around us, with Brittany and her friends making increasingly pointed comments about the importance of dressing appropriately and how some people just didn't understand social situations. Each remark was carefully crafted to sound polite on the surface while delivering maximum damage underneath. Then Brittany clapped her hands together with fake enthusiasm. "Oh, I have an idea. Let's play a little game. Everyone has to share their most expensive purchase from this year. It'll be so fun." My stomach dropped. This was it, the moment she'd been building up to all evening. One by one, the women around us began sharing their purchases with obvious pride. A Hermes bag here, a luxury vacation there, a sports car for the weekend. Each announcement was met with squeals of appreciation and demands to see photos. As they worked their way around the circle, I could feel the trap closing. Brittany had deliberately saved me for last, wanting to maximize the impact of my humiliation, when I had to admit that my most expensive purchase was probably my $43 dress. But then something unexpected happened. As Madison was gushing about her new diamond tennis bracelet, Thomas quietly asked Brittany, "Is this your father's company you mentioned?" "Oh yes," Brittany replied proudly, turning to face him fully. "Daddy owns Preston and Associates. It's one of the most successful marketing firms in the city. We handle all the biggest clients, make millions every year. It's quite the family empire." Thomas nodded thoughtfully, then pulled out his phone. "Excuse me for just a moment," he said politely, stepping a few feet away to make a call. I watched him with growing confusion as he spoke quietly into the phone. I couldn't make out most of what he was saying, but I caught a few words that made my heart race: acquisition, Monday morning, and due diligence. When he returned to the group, Brittany was just finishing her introduction of the game. "Now, Rachel," she said with that poisonous smile, "it's your turn. What's your most expensive splurge this year? That lovely dress you're wearing?" The circle of women leaned in expectantly, ready to witness my public humiliation. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could speak, a distinguished older man in a perfectly pressed uniform approached our group. "Excuse me," he said, addressing Thomas with the kind of deference usually reserved for royalty. "Mr. Blackstone, I hope you're enjoying your evening. Is there anything we can do to make your visit more comfortable?" The silence that followed was deafening. I felt the blood drain from my face as the name registered. Blackstone, as in Blackstone Industries, as in the billionaire CEO who'd been featured on the cover of Fortune magazine just last month. Brittany's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, and then pure terror. Her champagne glass trembled in her hand as she stared at Thomas with wide eyes. "Did he just say—" "Blackstone?" Jessica whispered, her voice barely audible. Thomas smiled politely at the club manager. "Everything's perfect, thank you, Robert. Please give my regards to your wife." As the manager walked away, Thomas turned back to our now stunned audience. "I'm sorry, where were we?" "Oh, yes, the game." He looked directly at Brittany, and I saw something in his expression that made me understand why he was one of the most feared businessmen in the city. "You were asking about expensive purchases," he continued conversationally. "Well, I've been considering acquiring a small marketing firm recently. Preston and Associates, actually. The asking price was around $50 million, if I remember correctly." Brittany's face had gone completely white. You're... "Thomas Blackstone, yes, Chief Executive Officer of Blackstone Industries." He said it so casually, like he was mentioning the weather. "Your father and I have been in preliminary discussions about the acquisition. Though after tonight—" He paused, looking around at the group of women who were now staring at him in shock. "I think I'll be passing on the opportunity." The words hit the group like a physical blow. Madison's mouth fell open, Jessica took a step backward, and Brittany looked like she might faint. "You see," Thomas continued, his voice still perfectly calm, I make it a point to understand the culture of any company I'm considering purchasing. The way employees are treated, the values that are demonstrated, the character of the leadership team. Tonight has been very illuminating. He turned to me, and his expression softened completely. Rachel, you mentioned once that you'd always dreamed of starting your own business. I've been thinking about launching a new marketing division, and I could use someone with your skills and work ethic to head it up. Vice President of Operations has a nice ring to it, don't you think? I stared at him in complete shock, unable to process what was happening. This man I'd been dating for 8 months, this humble guy who drove an old Honda and split dinner bills with me, was offering me a position that would probably pay more in a year than I'd made in my entire career. Brittany finally found her voice, though it came out as more of a squeak. Mr. Blackstone, please, there's been a misunderstanding. It was all harmless fun. Rachel knows we were just joking around. Thomas looked at her with the kind of expression that probably made Fortune 500 CEOs break out in cold sweats. Harmless fun, he repeated slowly. Is that what you call deliberately humiliating someone for their economic status? Creating elaborate scenarios designed to cause maximum embarrassment? Using your position of privilege to make someone feel worthless? The silence stretched out painfully as Brittany struggled to find a response. Around us, other party guests had begun to notice the drama unfolding, creating a wider circle of spectators. I think, Thomas continued, that Preston and Associates and I are not a good cultural fit. In fact, I'm now considering starting a competing firm. I have a feeling we'll be able to poach quite a bit of talent from companies that don't value their employees properly. He offered me his arm with a gentle smile. Shall we go? I think we've seen enough of this particular social situation. As we walked toward the exit, I could hear the frantic whispers beginning behind us. Brittany would spend the rest of the night doing damage control, trying to convince her father's business contacts that she hadn't just single-handedly torpedoed a $50 million deal. Jessica and Madison would be frantically Googling Thomas Blackstone on their phones, probably finding photos of him at charity galas and business conferences that they'd somehow missed. But all I could think about was the man walking beside me, the same person who'd laughed when I spilled coffee on him 8 months ago, who'd never once made me feel ashamed of shopping at thrift stores or clipping coupons, who'd somehow seen something in me that I'd never seen in myself. So, I said as we reached the Rolls-Royce, Billionaire CEO, huh? That's quite a career change from consulting stuff. He laughed, and it was the same warm, genuine sound I'd fallen in love with. I wanted you to like me for who I really am, not what I have. Most people change when they find out about the money. And who you really are is someone who would give up a $50 million business deal to defend me. He stopped walking and turned to face me, taking both of my hands in his. Rachel, what I am is someone who's been looking for a real partner in life, not someone who sees dollar signs. You've worked 3 jobs to put yourself through community college. You've never asked me for anything. And you judge people by their character instead of their bank account. That's worth more than any business deal. As we drove away from the Grandview Country Club, I couldn't help but laugh at the irony of it all. Brittany had invited me to her party to show me how the other half lives, and she'd been right. I'd definitely learned something about wealth and privilege that night. I'd learned that real class has nothing to do with how much money you have, and everything to do with how you treat people who have less than you. I'd also learned that sometimes, when you think you're getting invited to your own humiliation, you're actually walking into the first day of your new life. Can you imagine the look on Brittany's face? Sometimes karma comes in designer suits. If you love this story of sweet revenge, smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible tales of underdogs getting their justice. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in Rachel's situation? See you in the next story.